Hello and welcome. My name is Phil Rose, and I'm the Director of Spiritual Life at Episcopal Homes. And due to an outbreak of COVID 19 on one of our skilled care units, we will not be doing our Good Afternoon and Good Morning Spiritual Life shows live from the Lee Chapel. We are recording them from various locations and posting them to 7.1. So we're glad that you found us, however you did, because we'll also post these on YouTube as well. So today I am coming to you from my labyrinth in my backyard. So I'm very happy to be here with you. We have been reading the book When the Heart Waits by Sue Monk Kidd, and we have reached a section on attunement. So I'm going to continue. Sue Monk Kidd is the author of The Secret Life of Bees, and she wrote this book, When the Heart Waits. Prior to that, it's the story of her coming to grips with her own midlife crisis, her disenchantment with a lot of things in life, and her spiritual search. And she has been sharing a lot of things with us during this time. I've been reading this book on Tuesdays and Thursdays during the pandemic. And today we're picking up late in the book. There's just a little bit left of the book. Well, probably about 10 sessions, but we're on a section on attunement. And this is what she has to say about that. There are perhaps three stages in contemplative awareness or attunement. In the first, we hear the words, but not the music. As I was leaving a concert of Handel's Messiah, I overheard two women talking. Wasn't that the most glorious music you ever heard? One asked. The other replied, Frankly, I didn't like the repetition of words in the lyrics. I walked away appalled. One woman had heard the music, the other had heard nothing but the words. That's often the way it is with the concert of life. Some of us hear only the words. We have a grasp of outer things. We know the right answers, the correct lines, the proper behavior and wording for life. We live by rote, mouthing the words, unaware of the depth of melody flowing inside. At this level, we tend to live by time, so mired in chronos that we don't even realize that there's kairos in the world. As we grow in contemplative awareness, however, we hear the words and the music. We wake to inner things, to the interior life, to the glorious lilt of the soul. We begin to discover a new horizon of consciousness that brings us in contact with the here and now. We pause now and then to hear the deep down music God plays within and around us. We're like one who sits in the audience and listens appreciatively. Finally, in the third stage of attunement, we become the music. In Four Quartets, T.S. Eliot speaks of music heard so deeply that it is not heard at all, but you are the music. As we enter the deeper levels of contemplation, we cease hearing the music and we become the music. We leave our chair in the audience and enter the symphony. Becoming the music is the height of beingness. It happens when we dwell in the now with such openness and wholeheartedness that we merge with the moment, with the presence hidden within. A monk at the Abbey of Gethsemani seemed to be expressing this state when he told me that the aim of the spiritual life is finding union with God through contemplation of everything around you and then of divinity. This is the God life in the here and now, he said. It breaks in upon us. Our hope is to make it more and more continuous. We can move through all three of these stages of attunement in a single hour, or never budge from the first stage in an entire lifetime. Some days I hear only the words. Some days I hear the music. My moments of being the music, well, they're rare. However, when we do taste such moments, we're left with the feeling that this is the way life is supposed to be. That's the sense I had when I sat beneath the mossy tree at Springbank. As I became more and more present to the music of those moments, I not only heard the rise and fall of God in the notes, I entered them. For a brief time, I felt like music. Authenticity. In another Hasidic tale, a rabbi named Zuzah died and went to stand before the judgment seat of God. As he waited for God to appear, he grew nervous, thinking about his life and how little he had done. He began to imagine that God was going to ask him, "Why weren't you Moses?" Or "Why weren't you Solomon?" Or "Why weren't you David?" But when God appeared, the rabbi was surprised. God simply asked, "Why weren't you Zuzah?" The spiritual journey is one of becoming real. Waiting can offer us the gift of authenticity. It can help us give new birth to a new way of being true to ourselves. As we wait, we discover that it's okay. It's really okay not only to imagine who we truly are inside, but to say who we are, welcome who we are, and even be who we are. When I first began writing, I couldn't admit to anyone, even myself, that I was a writer. People would call me on the phone while I was writing and ask, "What are you doing?" And I'd say, nothing." After a while, I admitted, gulp, that I was writing. But I made light of it, as if the identity belonged to someone else and I was borrowing it. Later, as I came to my authenticity as a writer, I simply answered, "I'm writing." Owning my writerhood was a slow process. That's how it is with the new selfhood taking shape within. We own it little at a time. Bit by bit, the realness shines through. In the fall of that year, I tossed my easel and sketch pad in the car and drove to Cayuga Episcopal Center in the Blue Ridge Mountains. On the way, I passed a billboard advertising Coca-Cola. "The real thing," it said, and I smiled. I'd spent a lot of my life wearing masks to fit the occasion, being everything to everybody, even if that meant being someone other than myself. Now, after long months of passionate waiting and labor pains, it seemed that I was birthing more of my true self, the real thing. At Cayuga, I walked to the edge of the 30-acre lake surrounded by mountain laurel. I set up my easel, pulled out my charcoal pencils, and looked about for a scene to sketch. There were so many: the sun nesting on the mountains like a small red bird, ducks floating on the lake, trees the colors of pumpkins. I began to draw, but none of those lovely scenes around me. I drew something inside me instead. I sketched a mother cradling a newborn baby against her breast. I drew until the remaining light had nearly seeped away. Then I stared at the picture. In an instant of recognition, I knew that God was the mother in the picture, and I was the child. Yet I also felt that I was the mother and God was the child. Gazing at the sketch on my easel, I felt the realness of the tiny new creature inside me. That moment liberated a freedom not only to say who I was and what I believed, but to actually be this person God and I had birthed and would go on birthing. Several nights later, I dreamed a similar message. I awoke while it was still dark and wrote the dream down. I'm walking around a circular lake. In the water, I see the reflection of a tree that's filled with butterflies. I walk on, struggling with lots of bramble until I find the actual tree growing beside the water. I stand beneath it with a sense of awe. I realize that I'm supposed to purchase the tree. At first, I don't know if I have enough money. I must reach deep down in all my pockets before I find enough money to buy the tree. The tree full of butterflies spoke to me of the authenticity beginning to unfold inside of me, the wobbly new wings opening up. I was terribly unfinished. I had certainly not arrived, and never would. Do any of us ever really fully arrive? I had days when I packed up my wings and didn't give authenticity a thought. Still, there was some breakthrough of newness in my life. The little red hen was learning how to love herself and be in touch with her soul, to be here now, to become delight and play with God. The little girl with a curl was learning to author her new life, to be true to herself, to be real. Gradually, Rapunzel was discovering her God-given empowerment and autonomy. The tinsel star was continuing to encounter God's love, which helped her accept herself and her humanity and lessened her need to perform and to achieve. Chicken Little was learning how to risk entering life more abundantly and fully. The Tin Woodman was returning to the earth of her own body, gradually finding a new wholeness for the divisiveness that kept body and soul separated. As at first, my dream suggested the realization of the new isn't submissive. It's a mere reflection in the deep pool of ourselves. Something there, but not yet actualized. We have to struggle through a lot of inner bramble to get to the real tree. I tripped over fears about what it would mean to really be my authentic self. What if I broke some of the rules of life I'd grown up with? What if others rejected my newness? I came to realize that I needed to purchase the butterfly tree. In other words, I needed to make the new life, this new landscape in my soul, my own. In dreams, money is often symbolic of energy, the currency of life. God seemed to be offering a suggestion that I dig down into the deeper pockets of myself to find the spiritual energy to own the newness that was unfolding. We find this spiritual energy by returning again and again to God at our center and making time for the soul. The soul must be continually nourished, or like the body, it becomes weak and malnourished. Without spiritual food, there's little energy for the inner movement, so necessary for living deeply in the spiritual life. Many times we starve our souls, although we wouldn't dream of starving our bodies, or we offer them only shallowness, a spiritual junk food. The soul craves experience that offers it rich depths of God, silence, solitude, holy leisure, simplicity, prayer, journaling, the Eucharist, rituals that touch the space of mysteries, symbols and images, the Bible, laughter, delight in the divine presence, deep encounters with creation, and the merciful coming together of human hearts. All these feed the soul, producing energy for living the transformed life. When I fail to feed my soul, I soon notice that I have less strength for living authentically. At times, my energy becomes depleted, weakened. I'm more apt to revert to old patterns. That's when I need to return to the deeper pockets and replenish my soul. There's truth in Psalm 23. Allowing oneself to be led by still waters really does restore the soul. Owning the butterfly tree is a continuous process. Just as we constantly give birth to a more authentic, Christ-like self, we need to constantly tap the spiritual energy necessary to nourish it. So I'm going to stop reading there for today. I just have a few words. I have said this throughout the pandemic. We don't know why we're in a pandemic, and in a lot of ways, that's not our question.